It's early January 2025 and I've had some time to think. I've had time to think about the things I would love to see in the watch world in 2025. Things I want more of, things I want to stop, and just things I wish we would finally get. Here goes. Do you know what Rolex did in 1956? They released the Milgauss. If this was Omega, I would guarantee you that in the anniversary year, Omega would be releasing a Milgauss. Omega never misses an opportunity to release a celebration edition or a birthday edition or an anniversary edition. Omega has these celebrations as often as my local supermarket has their birthday, which essentially feels like all the time. But Rolex, they're not like that. Some years they release a watch that has some sort of anniversary, and other years they do absolutely nothing, and some years they release something in a year that has absolutely nothing to do with the anniversary date. The Milgauss is from 1956. It was discontinued in 2023. 2025 is only the 59th anniversary, so odds are supposedly against a release. But here's my hope and my thinking. They start in 2025 with releasing a gold or two-tone Milgauss, and I don't want that watch. This isn't uncommon for brands to do. You release a marquee model in a premium configuration, and then in the following year, you release the crowd pleaser. Tudor launched the Black Bay Burgundy first. The black dials and the blue dials came later. IWC waited a full year before releasing the marquee blue dial for the Ingenieur. I'm crossing my fingers for a watch that I don't want, a gold or a two-tone Milgauss, and then a Z Blue in 2026. That would be my dream scenario. Pink. I'm tired of pink. In particular, I'm tired of Pepto-Bismol pink. Over the last couple of years, Rolex did a pink watch. Zenith had a cancer research pink Chronomaster Sport. The Shunbun from Seiko has existed for a long time. Tudor released the pink chrono, and recently Bremont released a limited edition Terra Nova. I'm tired of pink for two reasons. Nobody seems to be able to get pink right. They're almost always way too pink, to a degree where my 8-year-old daughter, who loves unicorns and rainbows, thinks most of these watches are just too pink. When an 8-year-old girl thinks there's too much pink, then you know you're not on the right track. The positive, though, is that I've found a massive appreciation for the Shunbun. For the longest time, I always thought it wasn't pink enough, but considering all the alternatives that have been released, I've changed my opinion and come to the conclusion that the Shunbun is probably just the right amount of pink. Second, pink is a lazy way of speaking to female watch buyers. It tells me that a lot of watch companies have no idea at all what women want. There's this term in marketing which is shrink it and pink it. And some women might want it, but my gut feeling and my rational analysis both tell me that pink is not compelling for women. What I would like to see, though, more so, is what Formex have done, stuff like colored meteorite dials. That would be cool. I've got two wishes for Omega. First up is the coaxial movement. I'd go so far as to state that the Omega Metas coaxial movements are the most solid mass-produced movements out there. They are as precise as they can be. They've got a proven track record of massive reliability, but they contribute to far too thick watches. The Seamaster 300M with no date is 13.8 millimeters thick. That's partially because of a display case back, but it's very much also down to the movement. In comparison, a Daytona chronograph is under 12 millimeters thick. Movement innovation isn't cheap. There's a reason the Caliber 400 of the Zenith El Primera watches is an iteration of a movement that was introduced in 1969. So many movements today have been around for decades with minor iterations. As multiple industry insiders have said to me, building a movement from the ground is just a world of pain. But if anybody could make a thinner movement and an overall case construction thinner, why wouldn't it be Omega? Almost all of their watches, from the World Timer to the Seamaster to the Planet Ocean to the Speedmaster, all of them would benefit from thinner cases. I also wish that you would subscribe to this channel if you feel that the content warrants it. Subscribing is likely the best way for me to gauge how I'm doing in terms of making something that's worth watching. So click on the subscribe button and ideally also the notification bell if you feel the videos are worth it. Thanks a ton. Omega again. I want a 40mm 300M. I'm not sure I'd buy one because I already have the No Time to Die, and just getting another diver would be more than a bit redundant in my collection, but 40mm would be a great move for Omega. They need to keep the helium escape valve, in my opinion, but they could make it smaller and more balanced. Omega are currently According to Morgan Stanley, the third biggest Swiss or German watchmaker, only surpassed by Rolex and Cartier. They've had huge successes with the Moonswatch collaboration and last year's releases of the Black Dial Equaterra, the Speedmaster Moonwatches, and the first Omegas in space. They've all been crowd pleasers. The Seamaster 300M is likely one of the top 3 most popular watches, and I'm mindful of the fact that just because randos in the internet and YouTube talk about how smaller sizes are more popular, it might not actually be necessary. Maybe the Seamaster 300M is performing exactly as Omega wants it to. My gut feeling though is that the Seamaster 300M would benefit from a resize, bringing it back to something more like the original 300M from the Pierce Brosnan Bond era. 41mm like the 2531.80.00 or maybe even 40mm. I think that has real potential, especially if they ditch the classic bracelet and go for something tapered and not with the Equaterra deploying clasp, but something more like the Speedy clasp. Dropshipping. This wish isn't going to come true, but I'm hoping anyway. I am too old for dropshipping. Especially small brands like Studio Underdog have been doing this a lot, releasing a limited number of watches where you sign up and sometimes even you have to be waitlisted, and it's just annoying. It's how things are done these days, but it's bad for customers. It's great for brands because they essentially always produce to order. They never have to worry about excess inventory, and it gives them liquidity up front. But customers, they put money up front for something that isn't ready, which is terrible for computer games, and it's terrible here. They haven't tried the watch, and they can return it for sure, but you are putting all the risk on the consumer. It also activates all sort of fear of missing out neurons, and our purchasing decisions are clouded by it. We inevitably buy because it's popular, not because it's good or something we actually like. And I really wish this trend would die, or at least not be as prominent. Market collapse videos from grey market dealers. I enjoy watch market videos. I think it's totally cool to understand how the industry is going, who's up, who's down. I also think it's fair to have an interest in where deals can be had on Rolex and Tudor and Patek and all the other brands. I do those videos myself. I am, however, hopeful that we're done with Rolex and Patek and AP collapse videos. It's especially grey market dealers that do these kinds of videos, and they're just predicated on so much flawed reasoning that they frustrate me. The frustration stems from a couple of key problems. First of all, the market never collapsed. What happened was a bubble burst. Historically, the kind of hype we saw for Rolex and AP and Patek and Jean post-COVID was a huge anomaly. Theoretically, it could happen again, but the reality is that historically, most watches from most brands trade below retail the instant they're released. Brands have been better at controlling their supply chain and not dumping tons of stock that eventually makes its way to Hong Kong and Bangkok at half the retail price. So prices are going to be nowhere near as low as they were back in the day, but sub-retail secondary pricing is what you generally should consider the norm. What we've seen in the last year and a half is a return to that normalcy, and all the doomsaying is just kind of tiresome. There's nothing that indicates we're in a recession. Nothing. The fact is that inflation is on the way down. The United States Federal Reserve has succeeded in pulling off a soft landing. Jobs are up, salaries are on the way up in the West. China hasn't quite recovered yet, but they are far from collapsing. A lot of people's wages haven't caught up to the last year's high levels of inflation though. Also, housing in a lot of Western countries in particular still make people feel like they haven't or aren't as financially in as good a place as they were 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. But it doesn't change the fact that all economists agree that we are not in a recession, and little to no economists are predicting a downturn. The risk of tariffs, trade wars, and just generally burning bridges with historical allies could, according to economists that know what they're talking about, quickly send things in a negative direction for regular Americans and the rest of the world. But right now, nothing in the cards is indicating that anything, including the watch market, is collapsing. It is declining as it has for the last 25 years, but it's a slow decline. It's not a collapse. Grey market dealers sometimes talk like they're the center of the universe, as if they set the market, and they just don't. Grey market dealers want to sell things as high as possible. They would love it that all Rolexes were above retail and that customers were rabid for watches. Those were great times for them. Limited supply, massive demand. The regular watch market doesn't favor grey market dealers. 3 years ago, I could call any grey market dealer and tell them I would sell them my watch, but I wanted cash up front and no markdown from the commission price. Today, I can barely get them to take a Submariner on commission. They'll rarely, if ever, pay cash up front. And if they do, they're giving you a percentage off of the commission price. Grey market dealing has contracted. A couple of the dealers also died because they overextended themselves. The ones that saw the contraction coming slowed their buys and moved to commission quickly. And more importantly, it put them back in the position that they have historically been, which is not as central players in the watch world, but as an overflow mechanism for the primary market. The ADs, the boutiques, and the direct-to-consumer sales. So by all means, let's talk about the market, but let's avoid videos with the words collapse, crumble, disaster together with watch market, Rolex, and AP in the title. I just hope that kind of corrects itself, and I will take my own medicine on that one as well. There's a whole Breguet video on the way from me, but here's a brief taste. I want somebody famous to wear Breguet in 2024. It's likely going to require that Breguet launch a modernized tradition or classic. They might even have to launch a sports watch, which I hope they don't go down that route. But I've been diving into Breguet of late. I've even read a book about them in December. It was a bit of a tedious slog of a book, but I did learn more about the significance of Breguet. I want a 7097 and I want the world to realize how good Breguet are at making watches. So unfortunately, that means Mark Zuckerberg needs to dump those yawns and throw on a Breguet. And if he does, Breguet is back in real business. Tudor needs to do something new with the Pelagos line. The last couple of years have all been dedicated to the Black Bay lines and the new FXD line, and the Pelagos line seems to be off cycle. The last release, I think, was the 39mm Pelagos. I would love to see an updated titanium Pelagos. With a new colorway maybe, a little bit thinner maybe, giving us a pro-level diver update would be fabulous. Additionally, I'd also love them to release an updated full-size Black Bay GMT, also in a thinner version. The odds aren't high, but it would be cool. Here's the dream. 2025 is the year that Grand Seiko releases a competitive bracelet to their elegance watches. Grand Seiko has the coolest mass-produced movement out there with their high beat 5Hz movements. They've had the edge in terms of case, hand, and dial finishing over similarly priced Swiss brands for years. Take a loop, get up close, and you'll see that the dial and the hands and the cases are just finished better. Everything, to me at least, is sharper and more precise. They're almost at the level of medical precision, but their bracelet sucks. It feels cheap, it's just too light, it's too jangly. The clasp is a push-pin adjustment system that is simply outdated. If they put the effort into a bracelet in the way that they put effort into cases and dials, they'll have a crowd pleaser on a whole other level. So I was watching a YouTube video where somebody was talking about Patek and the Cubitus. Specifically, one of the people talking had the controversial take that Thierry Stern's statements about the poors who can't afford their products was cool. The guy even stated that he had been in boardrooms where CEOs and other executives apparently talk like that about customers and non-customers. So I've also been in rooms with CEOs and I've also been in rooms with board members, and I can say this fairly unequivocally. Any company that talks about its customers, potential customers, or non-customers in that way do not deserve to succeed. And this isn't because I'm anti-capitalist. It's because once companies get that arrogant, they inevitably fail, or at a minimum, they are on track to set themselves up for a fall. The moment you as a company or as a board of executives assume that we don't care about those people because they're not our customers, you are already down a slippery slope of arrogance that can completely tank your brand. CEOs and executives in any industry that talk like that lack humility. They are self-important, they have lost sight of what makes their products attractive to customers, and they are blind to the fact that those people that are not your customers today could potentially be your customers tomorrow, and you have already alienated them. Taking current customers for granted and assuming future customers also are a given is hubris, and it speaks to massive incompetence in that boardroom. Those that talk like that are not qualified to be in that room. So that statement was wrong, and my wish for 2025, that the Cubitus trades below retail by the end of 2025. And with that rant done, I also want an affordable Zenith perpetual calendar in the Chronomaster line. I'd love to see a Nomos chronograph. Rolex should ideally continue to become more readily available, so only watches like, the Daytona, the GMT, and the Titanium Yachtmaster are the ones that require waitlist. And finally, although I quite like Christopher Ward, I want somebody new to come on the stage and start stealing their thunder. A new value brand with new ideas. That would be cool. What are your wishes for the coming year? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.